Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with this Halloween episode of the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the exclusive online wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Back with me, returning for the first time in a little bit, the one and only Richard Skinner, Skinny of Local12, covering the Cincinnati Bengals. He was out in Santa Clara covering that game. One of the best games, regular season games, I think, in the Zac Taylor era here in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow putting on, quite frankly, a historic performance. Skinny, it's good to have you back on Halloween. And for once, actually, first time in, I guess, 3 years, the Bengals are not playing on Halloween Day.
That's weird. That is very, very strange for sure. Obviously, last year was the horrific Halloween game up in Cleveland where they got blasted. Chidobe Awuzie got hurt. I mean, that was just an absolute unmitigated mess up. And then from that point forward, they had a great season. So, maybe not playing Halloween. It's a nice time to bypass it.
And the year before, of course, was the inimitable Mike White game where he comes in relief of Sam Darnold and lights up the Bengals in the second half. And that was an ugly loss, 34-31, and that was back in 2021. So the Bengals are not having to worry about missing Halloween. They can be home with their friends and family, handing out the candy, trick-or-treating, as I will be. I will not go out trick-or-treating. You will not either, will you, Skinny?
No,
okay.
Not a chance. I'm actually broadcasting a high school soccer game tonight, a regional championship game, regional semifinal game.
Oh,
Milford and Mount Notre Dame girls. So I'll be there. Unfortunately, won't be handing out candy. I actually enjoy that part of Halloween. When I had my kids, and both my kids are grown and out of the house, my wife would be the one that would take them trick or treating. I would be the one that would sit at the end of the driveway with a big vat of wine and hand out the candy. And I actually did enjoy that. Our neighborhood was pretty tight, and it still is. Some of the families have moved, but we've all kind of grown up together, watched our kids grow up. So we'd all kind of congregate in one or two spots and hand out candy and kind of shoot the breeze, and it would make the time fly. So yeah, tonight I would say sitting outside will not be a kind situation because of the weather.
No, it's going to be very chilly. By the way, when I was young, my favorite Halloween costume was that of a football player. I know that'll shock you, but I had the helmet. Actually, it's a helmet from 1972. Believe it or not, a Miami Dolphins helmet, because my sister got me it for Christmas, actually the previous Christmas, and I wore it for Halloween in 1973. And it's one of my true prized possession. Actually, it's right behind me. I'm not going to get up and show it to everybody. But that is what I was on Halloween. But I did indeed grow up a Bengal fan. So.
Yeah, and you look like from that 72 team, you'd either be Jim Kick or Howard Twilley. Which one would you be?
Jim Kick.
Okay, all right.
I gladly played the supporting role to the people ahead of me, as Jim Kick did there in Miami with Larry Zonka and actually Mercury Morris.
Yeah, he's great.
So anyway, enough of the frivolity. I want to get on to what happened Sunday in San Francisco. I think it's one of the best wins in the Zac Taylor era from start to finish. Obviously, a very complete game by the Bengals. Both sides of the ball making big-time plays, but we have to start with the play of the year so far for the Bengals. I don't think there's any question about that, and that is the Burrow scramble on the first drive, 3rd and 10 at their own 31-yard line. Zac Taylor said when Burrow completed that pass to T. Higgins for 11 yards and got the first down and made that miraculous scramble and took the hit from Fred Warner, it catapulted the offense. I would assume you agree with that.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you look at Joe, he's a tall guy, but he's not thick, right?
Right.
Well, Ben Roethlisberger was always a guy that was hard to bring down just because he was so thick and guys would just fall off of him. Lamar Jackson's elusive. There are certain scrambling quarterbacks. Joe Burrow showed everything on that play. He showed strength to twice rip away from sacks, the athleticism to then spin out of it and run away from it, and then, of course, the arm talent to make that throw on the run on the sideline to T. Higgins. It was literally everything you could want in a quarterback in a broken play situation. And, I know Joe told us after the game about how he's tried to increase his athleticism, and that was a big point of emphasis for him. And obviously the strained calf limited that. But that did show that. I've always thought Joe's a good athlete. I mean, if you go back, Joe was a heck of a baseball player growing up, gave it up eventually, really good basketball player on some pretty good high school teams and played some AAU basketball as well. But again, when you see him, Mike, we see he is not a thick guy. I mean, when you see Ben Roethlisberger, like, yeah, I get why guys fall off of him. He's a monster. He's a pulling guard playing quarterback. Joe's not, but man, he showed incredible strength twice on that play.
Well, the other thing I would tell you about that play that impressed me as it was happening is he didn't give up.
Right.
You know, some quarterbacks are like, okay, I feel the pressure. I'm not going to turn the ball over. I'm just going to take the sack and live to fight another. You know, it would have been obviously the Bengals would have had to punt the ball if he didn't complete the play and execute the first down pass. But he was just not going to give up on that play. And that, to me, if I'm watching that as an opponent, that is something that sticks out and says to me, if we're playing this quarterback, he's not going to give up on the play no matter what.
And that was not the case in Tennessee. That was not the case even in the Rams game, where he was efficient and did what he had to do. That was not the case in week 1, even in Cleveland, because of the rain, because he didn't want to risk it. That's been the case at times, maybe not to the degree he did it on Sunday, but he has shown elusiveness. He's shown the ability to extend plays. And again, I know people will point to the offensive line a lot of times and, why is he always scrambling? Why does he have to scramble? Listen, go watch Kansas City and watch how many times Pat Mahomes has to take a snap, run for his life, keep the play alive, and then go create a play. That's what the great ones do. And Burrow showed all of that on that play. I mean, I wouldn't have blamed him, Mike, after he got out of the sack if he just got outside and just thrown it into the stands and said, that's it, we're done, let's punt it. He actually kept his eyes downfield, spotted a receiver in a very tight window along the sideline, and made a perfect throw that I'm not sure you make on air, let alone with a guy covering you after you had to scramble away from 2 sacks. That was incredible.
If you have the chance, go check out everybody watching and listening to this, Joe Goodberry. He has a great breakdown of that play, and I think it points out a number of things. First of all, what the offensive line did, what Alex Kappa did on his peel block.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And how Burrow, as you said, he checked twice down the field before the pocket collapse. Then once he eluded Armstead and Bosa, he scrambles out and he just doesn't, as you said, look to get rid of the ball. He gets his eyes back downfield, sees T, and just throws an absolute dot. Incredible. The other tweet that I want people to check out, and it adds really interesting perspective, is Dan Hord's tweet of Joe Burrow running sprints, working on his speed and his athleticism back in whatever it was, May, I believe.
I remember that. I remember that tweet. Yeah.
And it was really, it's really indicative of how much Joe Burrow works on his athleticism. And I think it's obviously been muted a little bit, Skinny, because of the injury to start the season. But it should encourage Bengal fans that Burrow is going to go full strength. Once he feels like he's good to go, he's not going to hold back. And I think that more than anything else should give Bengal fans hope going forward for this offense.
Yeah, people that would ask me, coming out of this bye week, the way the Seattle game ended offensively was discouraging a bit, right? I mean, the 78 yards or 76 yards in 34 plays and all those things. But the encouraging thing that I told fans was, and even friends, was he showed mobility in the Arizona game. He was really good on the first 2 drives of the Seattle game. And I think that was more of an offensive failure than a Joe Burrow injury issue in that Seattle game. Another week of the bye of getting healthy. I said, listen, all this comes down to, I do a segment with Mo Egger every Wednesday, and we talked about this last. I said, all this comes down to, man, before everybody can freak out about, oh my gosh, this is still a team that maybe can't, is when the man is healthy, forget about it. This is a great football team. And he showed everybody, I'm not just healthy, I'm even healthy and better. And that's why you should be completely encouraged, because of the way they won, the way he looked, and all of those things. And that's all this has ever been about, is once he got healthy and they were able to do some things that we may get into, like going under center, which unlocks some things, showing his mobility on broken plays. After that, it unlocks everything that they want to do in this offense. And you saw that on Sunday. And even then, they even talked about it. And they're right. They left some points on the board, too. The Irv Smith turnover, the missed field goal. They could have scored 40 on this team without really batting an eye, to be quite frank.
No question about that. And, the irony of that play, and I think it's worthy of all the time we're spending on it, because it was such a pivotal play and an indicative play of where the Bengals are now, as opposed to where they were a month ago. They could never have pulled this off. Burrow certainly couldn't have pulled it off. And it appears that the offensive line was collapsing on that play, but when you see what Kappa did, when you see what Karras did, when you see what Orlando Brown Jr. did on that play, not only did Burrow not give up on the play, the offensive lineman did not give up on the play. And I want to spend a little time here talking about the offensive line's best game of the year. Obviously, they were good in pass protection, but their run blocking, I noted this and I tweeted this early in the game on Sunday. I said, you have to be impressed with the way the Bengals are opening holes for Joe Mixon and the run game. And it really complemented what they were doing in the passing game.
Yeah, Mike, I think the final stats for under center runs were 11 for 30 yards, but it comes with a huge caveat. One of those was Burrow taking a knee at the end of the game, and two of those were negative runs on the last series the Bengals ran when the 49ers stacked the box, knew the Bengals were going to run. Let's take those out of the mix. I know you can't, but take those out of the mix. They were then 7 for 34 yards, I believe, on their other game. That's almost 5 a pop from under center. I think the under center stuff also opened up the run game. I talked to Joe. I didn't use the quote, and I'm probably saving it for a story this week to expound on it. But I asked Jonah in the locker room after the game about, how much did that help you guys? And he said it helped a ton. It allowed us to do some different things. That teams just can't sit on shotgun runs. And when you're under center, it opened up, defensive linemen can't decide it's going to be a run. They have to know, hey, maybe a play action pass is coming. And I think it helped the offensive linemen then fire out on occasion, as opposed to kind of setting up in shotgun run stuff. And that's hard to block for a lot of times. It's a complicated thing that I think you saw on Sunday when they were able to do all the things. It helped everybody: offensive linemen, Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow, the pass game, the entire offense.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
I just wonder sometimes why the Bengals were slow to get to the under.
Well, I think it's Cap. I think they just didn't want him pushing away from under, and that's where it goes back to the whole health thing. Maybe they could have unlocked that in the Seattle game, Mike. But I'm of the ilk. We've talked to the coordinator Brian Callahan a little bit about this. It's just a sense I get. I don't think he's really fully answered it, but I think they wanted to get to that Seattle game as much as possible. They knew he was a little bit more mobile, but why push the under center at that point? Yeah. Just because you don't know.
That makes sense.
One more full week, and now after the full week, you're like, dude's ready to go. Let's do this thing and see how it works. And you saw the proof on Sunday.
Well, to their credit and to Zac Taylor's credit, to Brian Callahan, to Joey Bosa's credit, the head athletic trainer of the Bengals, they took their time. When everybody is, I hate using the word panic because I think that's hyperbole a little bit and exaggeration, but when everybody is worried about the start, another 0-2 start, teams 1-3, they looked horrible in Tennessee. They were embarrassed in Tennessee. And there were serious doubts about, can this team really do this again? Can they rebound from a very slow start? And the Bengals clearly were like, yeah, it's a long way to go in the season, and we want the best Joe Burrow, and we're not going to push it. And credit to them for not doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the first 3 losses, I'm going to chalk up week 1 to the rain, to the fact that again, Burrow missing camp. You could see the time, even if there wasn't rain that day, the timing was so bad for everybody that they were never going to connect. And plus, and we'll agree with this, I'm sure you will too, that Cleveland defense at home is just dynamic, and especially when they have all their hands on deck, and they proved that day. Baltimore game was a 50-50 game, and part of the issue was Joe Burrow himself throwing an interception in that game. Tennessee was a completely compromised Joe Burrow, who I do think was a little bit spooked after almost getting picked off on that first drive, and then they had to settle for the field goal. And then he played the rest of the game in a phone booth, and the offensive line was really up against it, and it just kind of snowballed on them. And from that point forward, things have kind of little by little unlocked themselves. I get the hand wringing over the way the Seattle game ended offensively. I do get, because it was like, all right, Burrow's healthy. They look dynamic on the first 2 drives. What the hell happened? Well, sometimes that's the NFL. And so I think.
And a very good defense.
And a very good defense, correct. And so, yeah, I think, again, when I look back at those first games now in retrospect, the Tennessee game was disappointing. That was a complete Joe Burrow injury game. Baltimore, you chalk it up to those guys are always going to play one-possession games, and they got the better of you. And then week 1 was what it was. And so now that everything's back to what feels like normal, yeah, this team should make a lengthy run the rest of this regular season into now the way things are starting to shape up, a chance to still fight for the number 1 seed. I know I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but you still put yourself in the conversation of that thanks to Kansas City losing, and because you still play Baltimore again.
I mean, they have a gauntlet still remaining of the schedule.
Sure.
However, when you put on that kind of performance against one of the 2 or 3 elite teams of the NFC, there's no question about that. I know they're hand-wringing out in San Francisco after the game. I had a chance enjoying a post-game meal with the significant other on Sunday night, watching NBC Sports Bay Area, and they're hand-wringing about their defense and their secondary, and they can't tackle, and they can't cover, and they can't get to the quarterback enough, and blah, blah, blah. Every team goes through this, but they're still one of the better teams in the NFC. When you are the Bengals and you go out there and beat them like a drum on their turf and end their 11-game home winning streak, to me, that tells me that this Bengal team is capable of beating any team, anywhere, anyhow.
Agreed. And I think that's what that game was. That was the statement of, now that our guy's healthy and our left tackle's back to healthy after he missed a portion of that Seattle game, and maybe that compromised some of that, and T. Higgins is back healthy, and all hands are back on deck. It goes back to the saying of last year, they have to play us, right? That would be the magic of those guys. It proves that this team is as talented as we thought it was. It was just completely compromised by the keyest of key players dealing with a significant injury in the first part of the season.
What do you think of the defense? What were your biggest defensive takeaways out of that game on Sunday afternoon?
Let me do my best Lou Anarumo for you. Yards don't equal points, Mike.
No, they do not.
They came
by the way, okay, let's start there.
Skinny. Yeah, okay.
His reaction and the teams and his players' reactions and Zac Taylor's reaction to Lou Anarumo was a great storyline at the end of the game. I didn't get a chance to really delve into that and write about that, and I wanted to. But tell us a little bit about that and what your impressions of their reaction to Lou on the sideline was.
Yeah, I think it shows just how much respect everybody has for him and the things that he does in big moments or gets his guys to do, because he'd be the first one to deflect to the players. He always does that to us when we talk to him. I will be interested to see what he says to us. We'll talk to him either tomorrow, Mike, or Thursday. And what his we don't get a chance to talk to coordinators after games. We talk to them during the week. I'll be interested to see what he thought of that. But yeah, I mean, in big moments, he comes up with great plans, does he not? Or his guys so buy into the plans. And yes, they gave up 460 yards. Now, like 80 of those were on the last 3 plays of the game. So, but still, they gave up a chunk of yards and they gave up a handful of big plays. But again, this is not happenstance that when teams get into the situation of scoring, they snuff it out. And they're also opportunistic. The Logan Wilson play wasn't by happenstance. That's a good athlete making a great drop and having great hands to intercept the ball, then having the athleticism to make a great return to put you in position of a short field to score. So, I mean, all of those things it's some of it is what they've done from a draft and free agency perspective. But Lou puts these guys into a position where they believe in tight spots. We're getting a stop. We're getting a turnover. They're not scoring on us. And he's right. It's a broken record, but yards don't equal points. They just don't.
No, they don't. And one reason they didn't equal points on Sunday was one of the best defensive plays of the year by a Bengal player, Jermaine Pratt's tip to himself, the interception. And I'll tell you, Skinny, what impressed me about that after the game and talking to Pratt at his locker, he actually said he had his head up and his eyes up. And I guess every good defensive player does this. But when he sees that the handoff was missed and he sees that right away, he knows to trail the quarterback and make sure that the quarterback, Purdy, who hurt the Bengals many times
with his legs
outside the pocket on Sunday. Pratt, in that particular case, Purdy did not, because Pratt followed him, trailed him, and then he tried to flip the ball. And Pratt, kept his hands down until the last second, got them up, tipped it to himself. Huge interception there, because the 49ers were on the verge of getting back into that game and tying it up.
Yeah, I mean, that would have tied the score and changed everything. And I think part of the thing that I heard from 49ers analysts after the game too is the whole, Brock Purdy has not shown he can play from behind yet. He's done a great job of playing from ahead. So that kept them from getting back to even and allowing them to go back to their bootlegs and their play actions and their and back to their run game. It kept them behind the 8 ball significantly. So yeah, I mean, it was such an incredibly athletic play, because I thought initially he was trying to shovel pass it, missed the shovel pass. And once he got on the perimeter, you could see where Elijah Mitchell was. He kind of snuck behind people down around the 5-yard line. I truly think if Purdy had gotten it over Jermaine Pratt, it probably would have been a touchdown, but he didn't, because Jermaine Pratt, as you mentioned, he does the right thing. He goes to the right spot and then has the athleticism to go up and make just an incredible play.
And he baited him because he didn't get his hands up right away.
Yep.
He wanted to make sure that he threw the ball so that he would get his hands on it. A brilliant play. There were so many. The reason I love that game on Sunday, Skinny, a result aside, okay, is there were so many seminal plays in that game that kind of summed up why the Bengals won and why the 49ers lost.
Yep.
And when you can do that, it's fun to break down a game like that. All right, let's get on to the game in front of us, and that is the Buffalo Bills primetime Sunday night, NBC. It is going to be, I think one of the more electric nights in Paycor history. And ironically, we said that heading into the Monday night game on January 2nd. First of all, how do you think the Bengals will handle Damar Hamlin?
That's a good question. I think I asked you guys a few weeks ago, would they introduce him, pregame? I mean, obviously you want to build up the electricity of the night, right? And do all the things that gets the crowd revved up. At the same time, there is some reverence there. There was a special moment where literally a life was saved on that field, and you want to kind of recognize that. Do you do that 30 minutes prior to kickoff and then let the crowd right before kickoff get revved up by all the things you do? It's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't think I'd handle it by introducing him. I think I'd maybe make a mention of it, like I said, a half hour before kickoff when the teams are still in the locker room. He may be inactive for the game for all we know, Mike. I mean, that's the other part to it.
He's only been active, I believe, once. Correct?
I think that's correct. Yeah, I think that's correct. So, maybe he's not even, a part of that. But again, if you can make some kind, I think you have to recognize the moment, right? It was so significant.
I think they will.
What we all saw, what the country saw, what it's done probably for CPR and AED awareness and all of those things. I think it's probably got to be recognized in some way. But I think you also have to let the crowd get revved up because it is a football game that you're looking to win on top of it.
Correct. And I would guess first responders, the medical team at University of Cincinnati.
Maybe recognize them all at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. And if he's inactive and the Bills, allow the Bengals that moment to recognize one of Buffalo's own player, Damar Hamlin, maybe that's how you handle it. Like you said, significant amount of time before kickoff. Yeah. And then once the game comes, it's about the game. And
the game. Yeah.
And I think the NFL and the Bengals and Bills certainly will talk about, I'm sure they have talked about that heading into this game, and NBC is going to have something to do with it. Correct. Because they certainly want a moment to pay tribute to that game, because it was just such a seminal, significant moment in NFL history because you saved a life on the field.
Mike, you and I are old enough to have covered a ton of stuff of significance and great moments, and also just watched on television great moments. As a journalist, being in that environment, I've never been. That will never escape my mind of what took place that night. Never. It was just. Nope. It felt so surreal because I can remember when I literally blurted out in the press box, "Oh my God, I think they're doing CPR." And I
do remember you saying that.
One of our colleagues said, "Don't jump to conclusions." I said, "No, man, look." And he looked. He said, "Oh my gosh, you're right. They are." Because I wouldn't have blurted that out if I hadn't seen what I thought I saw. And at that point in time, then it got real for everybody involved.
It did, and I will pass this along. One of the things I'll always remember is T. Higgins leaving after the game. Downstairs near the security office,
embracing his mom.
That to me is the one moment that sticks out, besides the staff, rescuing Damar Hamlin and rushing him to the hospital. That made it human to me.
Yeah. And he felt guilt that he shouldn't have felt, but he also was very human in that moment.
Well, and maybe, maybe it goes beyond guilt, Skinny. Maybe it was just like wrong place, wrong time. And he was part of the moment, right? And, in a moment like that, he needed love and support, and he had it from his mom. Okay, the game itself, I don't think the Buffalo Bills are what the Buffalo Bills have been the last several years. And your thoughts on the way the Bills and Josh Allen are playing?
Yeah, something's dysfunctional there. And I know the injury issues on defense are real. We got to start there. I mean, that's something that's out of their control, and that's certainly affected that defense. I mean, they've had, Ed Oliver's been out. They've had another tackle out. Obviously, Matt Milano's out. I mean, they've had some significant injury situations. So that affects their defense. But there's something dysfunctional about that offense. And maybe it's, they've tried to, I think, limit Josh Allen in just the quarterback run game. He still scrambles and he's still a dynamic scrambler. But, I think for a lot of guys after a few years in the league, you realize we can't, our running game can't center around their quarterback. So they've tried to go with the running game with a back or two, Cook being one of them, and it hasn't worked. And then it feels like it's either a big play to Stephon Diggs or it's nothing. They get nothing else. Gabe Davis has a moment here and there, but they just seem really dysfunctional on offense at the moment. And I thought it was maybe just going to England. Maybe it was 1 week, but it was a week before that. It was then the New England game. They just haven't looked right offensively. It was the game again, even the Thursday night game. They didn't look good offensively. They just looked dysfunctional on offense.
The Giant game on Sunday night was the first red flag, but when you follow that up with a loss against New England, a team that is abysmally bad. They are one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the AFC.
No question.
Any question about that. And we haven't even talked about today as the NFL trade deadline. And, the Patriots have a couple of guys that I think could really help the Bengals. But it's very unlikely the Bengals will pull the trigger on any deal just because they don't like trading draft picks. But the Bills have a lot to figure out in a short period of time. And certainly they have the talent to do so, but not as much talent, I think, as right now a healthy Cincinnati Bengals team does. I like the way the Bengals are playing heading into this game, but the Bengals need to win the game for this reason. It's an AFC game.
They haven't won one.
They have not won an AFC game in 3 tries this year, all 4 of their wins against the NFC.
And Mike, to your point, once you start, it's key because once you start getting to tiebreakers, and if you look at the AFC at the moment, it feels like other than a couple of teams, everybody has 2, 3, or 4 losses. I mean, it's so daggone jumbled that it's going to come down to tiebreakers for either the 1 seed, and maybe that can be head to head with Kansas City when you play them down the road. For the 2 seed, I mean, maybe it's you against Miami. You don't play Miami, and Miami winds up with a better AFC record than you, and hence they're going to get the 2 seed. I mean, all these seeding things too. So yeah, you got to start somewhere. This would be the right place to start. Plus, that stacks a 4th straight win. That stacks a 2nd straight win after the bye. That stacks a 3rd straight win over a team with a winning record. You start adding this thing up, and it adds to the confidence factor that I think is starting to bubble to the surface and would bubble even more with a win on Sunday night.
When Zac Taylor said time after time in training camp that the AFC North was the best division, I'm like, well, that's coach speak. A coach in that division, in his own division, is going to say that. When you look at the record, Zac Taylor has been proven true, at least through 8 weeks of the NFL season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how Pittsburgh has the record it has. It's just because Mike Tomlin finds ways to win. His guys just grit out wins. They obviously didn't do it this past weekend against Jacksonville. And Cleveland is compromised by the Deshaun Watson situation. But at full strength, Pittsburgh's probably the worst team in this division, and they'll still find a way to go 9-8. I mean, that's the thing. Now, Cleveland may really be compromised depending on Deshaun Watson moving forward, how long that injury lingers and or if it resurfaces for them. But yeah, no, there's no question. I mean, this is a really very difficult division to try to win. And it's always been their goal is win this division. You feel like you've got a good road to the playoffs because you've toughed out a tough division, and you still have a chance to do that too. I mean, he's right, at the bye week, they do have everything in front of them in their own destiny. And I think that's important to have of just control us. We control us. We're good. And you can't always say that in this league. You come to week 13 or 14 going, we need to win, but boy, we also need a lot of help. And that lot of help doesn't come a lot of times.
No, and that's the one thing that I've been impressed with this Bengal team the last couple of years is they haven't relied on a lot of help, to back into the playoffs. They've won their way to the postseason each of the last 2 seasons, and they certainly made the statement and won their way to a very favorable position going into this Buffalo game by beating San Francisco on the road. I just want to get your sense of the last time these 2 teams met, it was all about the run game. Do you think it could be that way again on Sunday night?
Yeah, I do. I'm glad they got the run game untracked a little bit for the Bengals. And I do think that now, once you go under center and you've established that we can run it between the tackles 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times when we're under center, They didn't get a chance to take a shot play from out of the from under center with some deep play action. I got a feeling if you can set up a few runs early in this game, you will be able to set some shot plays up. And I think that's coming here at some point. And boy, you start doing that. And Joe Burrow wheels and deals with his health out of the shotgun and can just pick his poison of where to go. Forget it. You're not stopping this offense in any way, shape, or form. It will score 30 points a week, almost every week, against any defense in this league.
Stripe the Jungle. Are you interested to see how it looks on Sunday night? I think it's a great concept. And, it's another indication to me that the Bengals are trying, Caroline and Elizabeth Blackburn are doing everything in their power to make this organization shine on the national stage. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm not a big hokey guy, but I do I think it's a good idea for the fans, and they embrace it. That's the other part. It's one thing if fans don't embrace it. The fans embrace it. I'm interested to see. My daughter and son-in-law are season ticket holders. And for those that maybe haven't seen this, they're doing this by section. One section's being asked to wear orange. The other section's being asked to wear black, and they're kind of trying to alternate it to make it look like stripes. So I have to see what section she's in. I'm sure she's aware of it. And I know she'll take part. So will my son-in-law. As you know, Mike, I got a few hate emails last postseason because I didn't wear Bengals colors on TV. It's not what we do, because we do cover the team and we have to be objective in what we do. And I can't do that. It's just not my personality to do that. But I do have a black pullover that I consistently wear to cover the games on Sunday night. So maybe I'll be part of the dress up, if you will, because I'll probably have the black pullover on for that game.
Maybe it's my days in New England, but one of my favorite pieces of clothing is the hoodie.
Of course.
I'm not going to be wearing a hoodie for the game on Sunday night. I can promise you that. So anyway, anything else you want to touch on, Skinny? Anything you're working on?
Yeah, the one thing for us, and you brought it up, is the whole trade deadline concept. I am a little dismayed if they don't try to swing something for either a backup running back or a tight end. And I think I'm in agreement with you. It's just not their MO. One thing I will say is they've changed their MO significantly in the last handful of years. So why couldn't you do it now? The fact you are going to get some compensatory picks, you don't really know how many, but it'll probably be a couple because of the free agents they lost versus the free agents they brought in this year: Jesse Bates, Hayden Hurst, etc. Samaje Perine.
You have plenty of capital.
Yes, you do. Exactly. With being able to hold on to enough draft picks. Because, again, they're going to have rookie contracts on this roster the next few years moving forward because of the superstars you're having to pay. So I understand their concept. But bringing Samaje Perine back seems the most logical decision to make because he knows the offense. You don't have to get somebody up to speed. It probably won't cost you a lot. You were probably already allocating the money he signed with Denver for anyway, because they did want to re-sign him. It just he did a preemptive strike and went to Denver thinking he would play. I know the hand-wringing over tight end. I get it, and I wouldn't be opposed to them making a deal there either. I just don't see that one. But running back, to me, especially with the Chase Brown injury, I think you're going to have to add one anyway, Mike. Why not go at a guy that knows your system, that you trusted enough to run double the plays your starter ran in the AFC Championship game? It just makes too much sense to me.
All right, he is Richard Skinner. You can follow him at Local12 Skinny. I got that right? On Twitter. Local12 Skinny. He is a one-of-a-kind character on the Bengals beat. I love having the guy on the beat. I really do. Skinny, you're the best.
Mike, I enjoyed it as always.
All right, he's Richard Skinner. I'm Mike Petralia. This has been the Jungle Roar podcast, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the exclusive online wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Until next week, keep that jungle roaring.
FanDuel is the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.